There it is. See, we're live now. So
Live.
on Lab Lounging. I don't know what episode it is, and I'm not going to look into it to find out. But I can tell you that I'm here with D Steel
Yep.
of Racks for Live.
Yep.
And what other crews you rolling with these days?
Man, so I am Rax for Live, MSX Audio, part of the Mellow Orange label. Yeah, man, just all around nice black guy.
So
Chilling with
Columba Cannon.
Columba Cannon, yeah, according to you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what we're gonna do is each time you come on the show, what I want to do is I want to get you like one of those NASCAR jackets, and we're just gonna start throwing mad patches.
Yo, Ken, that's a product right there. Mad patches. And the cover to your thing is just like NASCAR joints.
That's what we're gonna do, man. So I am the host, Ken Flux Pierce, aka Bad Black, aka Smelly Macaroni. So what we're doing today is we're gonna do a show based around things that inspire us and get us out of the regular humdrum of creating music, which music is, it's not so much of a humdrum kind of thing, but when you're doing a lot of it all the time, sometimes it's nice to either use gear or techniques or mental techniques, whatever, just to kind of pull you out of your regular workflow to come up with something new.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with this show. So the first thing I want to do is we'll talk a little bit about what the daily grind is like. So now you're a sound designer and music producer. You're doing both. And a lot of times those two worlds mesh, right?
Yeah.
So walk us through like an average day.
So first thing you already know, man, gotta walk wheezy. That's the first thing. Hang out with my wife, breakfast, all that stuff in the morning, and then I have a whiteboard in my office. It's on the other side where I have like a list of things that I gotta do. So along with that, I also have like this weird color palette when it comes to like records that I'm working on. So if I'm working on a song for an artist, I write a texture next to them. And I'm like, all right, this guy, his stuff sounds aggressive and buttery, or it has this very bright sound for his stuff. So when I write stuff like that, I kind of have to start thinking in my head, well, what are the presets that I'm going to make in order to produce this kind of stuff? Because I'm an anti-preset kind of guy. Like I don't like presets. So I have to, when it comes to producing music, I have to do sound design from the get. Like my drum sounds, my synth sounds, my bass sounds, all that stuff. Whether it's synthesis or miking up instruments and stuff. So it's, it's designed from the first step.
So for you, as you start going along, are you, so say you're working on a piece of music or something, are you breaking out any of that music to use in sound design and vice versa?
Yeah, so I try to be a dual creator.
Yep.
Where it's like, if I'm working on a piece of music, I'm saying to myself, well, what loops can I get out of this? What one shots can I get out of this? Because of the other things that I have going on. So I'm working on this piece of music, but I'm like, oh, that kick is dope. That snare is dope. That hi-hat that I made is dope. That bass tone is dope. Let me just grab all those and just throw them in a folder. And then I keep producing. So that's kind of that's kind of my vibe when it comes to sound design and production together. Yeah, they go hand in hand. I don't think that they've ever been separate from me.
Yeah, so a lot of the times when I'm working on, say, let's say I want to create individual one-shot sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, when I create those one-shots, I'm also creating loops, even though that's not the primary target. So I'll often create the loops because I need to know that the one-shots work in context. And if they're not working in context, I need to change things. And if they are working in context, well, now I have a cool loop that I can use as well. And I might be able to use that later on. So a lot of the times I'm running my sounds and then I'm just sampling them.
Yeah.
Now, and here's the thing about that is it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going through extended means to get those extra bits. So it doesn't mean that let's say I'm using the modular and I'm trying to create these one shots. Well, if I'm creating one shots, I'm probably not multi-tracking a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
So when I do the loops, oftentimes the loops will be maybe 4 tracks at most.
Okay.
So a lot of the times I'll stereo track them and then I'll mute out what I don't want from that loop. And then I'll do it that way. A lot of the times I'll do it that way just because it's quick and dirty and fast. And generally speaking, those loops, if it sounds mixed okay right then and there, chances are it's going to be usable for what I'm doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't necessarily mean that I won't. If I come up with something really complex, right? Like if I start going down the rabbit hole, as it were, and I start doing some really wild stuff with drums or something, yeah, I might break that out a little bit. But for the most part, yeah, I try to keep it like, okay, drums, synth line 1, synth line 2, bass line, percussion or something, or whatever sample stab, and I'll just run it like that, and then I'll throw all that into a folder, and I'll label it something that will hopefully help me remember. Sometimes I'll put dates on them, not all the time.
Yeah.
But at least that way I have a little bit extra from what my original project was.
So what's interesting is you said that you don't go deep into stuff, and sometimes I'm the same way. Like, the Zoom recorders.
Yeah,
Man, that's sound design for me because sometimes I'll just sit in a room and I'm like, so what I like to do is, that those those XY mics sound a certain way. So what I like to do is just put a pair of headphones on with a really long cable and just put the Zoom recorder in the middle of the room. And I just start hitting stuff and coughing and talking loud and doing all this stuff, making all this noise. I put on a windbreaker jacket and just start, just doing all this crazy stuff.
I hear you, man. I'll tell you what, man, the first time I got exactly what you're talking about, I got a Zoom H4n. The first time I put it on and I jacked up the recording level, and I was hearing like leaves blowing across the street. It was fall and they were like kind of dry, but you could hear this big chunky maple leaf just kind of like hitting across the road, and it sounded so crazy. And it was like, yeah, I was hooked on that. Just going around and recording like macro, like I would say like macro recording, like trying to get like really quiet things and then boosting them up and just having a blast with that kind of stuff. I tend to do that a lot.
Well, dude, I think I have an affinity for the imperfection of my surroundings. So meaning like the Zoom recorder is going to pick up my wife watching TV in the other room. And it is going to pick up Wheezy walking around the house with his, collar jingling. And I like all those sounds because for my style of music I call myself a micro sampler, where I've never sampled in a way where I sample the melody of something or a specific loop. What I've done is I'll grab the note that's in between a kick and the snare, just that air.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. I've been doing that since.
So I grab that and then I shake that with an envelope and and do stuff with that, because for me, that's my style of sampling, where people are like, hey, where'd you get that sample from? I'm like, in between the kick and the snare.
It's that ghost butter.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's that stuff. It's the stuff that glues things together that I love sampling. And
yeah,
for instance,
what I would do,
let me the same thing.
And just explain a real basic technique that I would do is, so on the 2000 XL, you can do time stretching on it.
Yeah.
And so when I first got that thing, what I would do is I would sample those in between hits on like a drum, on like a James Brown loop or something real overused by like
Mhm.
everybody, you know, and you would have these breaks and everybody was using them. So I would try to find ways to use them in ways that other people weren't. So
Yeah.
I would sample just these in between sounds. Um, and then what I would do is I would time stretch the crap out of those sounds or time compress them. Right. And you could get totally different sounds out of them just by time compressing or
Of
time
course.
stretching those sounds. And then I would make rhythms out of that. And they'd be like, oh, where'd that break come from? And I'd be like, oh, it's, you know, it's Funky Drummer or whatever, you know? And they'd be like, no, it's not. Yeah, it is, you know? And
Yeah,
I
man.
used to love doing that just to play with
All,
people's heads.
also sampling things out of phase too.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
just pull one side out and see what it sounds like by itself. You get a whole new texture.
Well,
And
yeah, and are you referring to as far as like, you know, taking those recordings like the old Beatles recordings and then you
yeah,
left and right? Yeah, 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 for
like
sure.
for instance, some of the old Miles Davis records, if you were to pull out the left side, you would hear just the drums, and all the other stuff is recorded on the left side. And I'm like, whoa, I could sample these breaks. Like this is super dope, you know. So it's one of those things that I think experimentation and just not being afraid of following rules causes me to create new stuff, at least stuff that's new to me. Because I know other people have done it, because I don't think there's anything new under the sun. But I feel like just trying stuff and trying to break habits while I'm producing is something that really gets me out of a creative funk.
Yeah, we got some nice comments in the chat here as well. And somebody was commenting about having the H4 and not being super stoked on the preamps. And one of the things that I found on it is, like you said, they have a sound. Those XY
Yeah,
mics have their own sound to them. And I kind of like them, to be honest with you. I use
yeah,
them for certain things. They have an interesting sound to them that I enjoy. And when you switch into mono mode, it really kind of like you get a big sound out of it for a mono recording. But if you're using dynamic mics plugged in with them, plug a cloud lifter in there, man,
yeah.
and it really helps.
Also, you can plug contact mics into them.
Oh man,
And
let me show you this. So here it is. I'll show you something. So I have this little case, right? Um, this is my little H4n case, all right? And then so inside of here, you're gonna like this, man. So you can get there's a it's called Red something. I forget what it's called. Anyway, there's this company that sells these dead cat type covers, these wind covers
yeah.
for the H4n.
Mhm.
I had my mom I had my mom sew this one together. Like I
Oh,
got the
I
material.
thought you were gonna say that's your mom's hair. You're like, I had my mom shave her head and make me one of these.
I went to the zoo and I shaved the underarm of a gorilla.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so, but no, like so basically what I did was I actually made my own. Well, I made her make it for me
Mhm.
because my skills is highly suspect. But this thing works great. So I just went to like Joann Fabric or whatever, and
Mhm.
I got the fur, and then the inside is like this cotton masking material. And the reason why I did it this way is because they're so susceptible to any kind of wind noise at all.
Yeah.
And the standard cover is horrible for it.
Yeah,
But
I have one and it's horrible.
yeah, but do you have anything like this?
So I have one of the dead cats, but mine
Yeah.
I don't like using it because it cuts a lot of the high frequency out for
That's
me.
what I was about to say. It actually dulls a lot of the highs, but I found that a lot of the times, if I'm using this, I'm probably recording something kind of louder
Yeah.
outside, and it works great for that. But what I did here is that I'm trying to show it.
Ken,
So the cotton,
this is making me uncomfortable.
yeah, the cotton is kind of airy in there.
Yeah.
It's not as dense as some of the other factory brands that I've seen, and
Yeah.
because of that, it doesn't cut out quite as much highs, which I really like. So it works really really well, but it cost all of like $2 to make, and is a totally worthwhile upgrade. So I recommend to anybody who has one of those, definitely get one. And I keep a pack of contact mics with me as well. I have like the little 1/4 inch ones. And
Yeah, I need to get those. I lost mine on my move, and I was thinking about soldering them, but I was like, nah. There's some really good quality ones that I saw on. It starts with a J. I forgot what the name of the
I
guy.
think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like really good. Actually, Jordy told me about those. Hold
You
on.
talk about the ones, and they got like the hydrophones too, and like the
Yeah,
ones
I
dipped in
want those.
silicone and all. I actually have a ton of that stuff. When you come by to get, he has a modular case that he's supposed to come by and get. When he comes by to get that, I'll hook you up, man, because I got a bunch of those contact mics. Because I go through them like crazy. I'll do stuff like I'll take them and I'll take hot glue
Hmm.
and I'll stick them to water bottles, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then you can fill them up with a little bit of water and you could do all kinds of goofy stuff. And depending on how much hot glue, you can kind of use it to dampen the sound down a little bit
Yeah,
because some of the stuff that I do is way too high impact for them. Like I'll shoot them with BB guns, and
okay.
because they're contact mics,
Yeah,
it doesn't really doesn't matter if you shoot the mic,
yeah.
which has happened. Sometimes, dude, I'll throw them in a fire. Like
That's
I've done all
hilarious.
kinds of weird stuff like that with them.
So check this out. I always tell people one of the reasons why I like the Zoom H5 is because if I wanted to record my drum set in the middle of the street, I can. And here's why. This thing has first of all, it has a detachable microphone, the detachable tops. So I can switch it. I can switch the pattern, but I also, I can record 4 signals with this. So like I can go into the backyard and put my drum set out there and put this on a mic stand and put a kick and snare and use this as an overhead and record my drum set outside.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I like to do that, and also the fact that the H6 and what is it, the I guess it's the new H5 or whatever.
yeah, so I have this is the 5.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they have that shotgun mic too,
Yeah.
which is really great for getting like, if you're doing it overhead and you want to have like specifically like a lot of snare or something like that, you could
Yeah.
do that, and that thing is cool, man. Like I still want to get one of those as well. What is it? The F4 and the F8. I really would like to grab those.
What's the one that just came out where it's just the body and you can buy the pieces by themselves?
Yeah, I think
The
it's.
mics.
I don't want to quote the name because I forget what it is off top, but yeah, there's that, and then there's the FSeries that has just the jacks, and you can plug in your mics into it like that and all. It's kind of and for the price point, I mean, you don't have to worry about them like you would if you had like a sound devices unit with you. Like
Man,
there's a lot of things that I'll do with my H4n like that. I'm on my third H4n because I
really?
break them. So yeah, I do dumb stuff like I'll have them. Like
Shoot
I
it
said,
with
I have
BB
them
guns.
outside. I had one that just broke. It fell gently from a tripod into the grass, and one of the mics broke off. Like they're not built crazy strong,
Mhm.
but they're super cheap too. So
I feel you. Yeah,
but
honestly, I think it's just things like that, like getting a handheld recorder or just hitting stuff will get people out of creative funks. Not hitting people, but just miking something up.
sometimes hitting people will too. Depends on
Yeah,
what kind of funk you're in.
yeah, it depends what the situation is. But yeah, man, I think it's pretty cool. Oh, I'm looking at the F1 now. Yeah, the F1 is pretty rad.
Yeah, yeah, that stuff is dope,
Oh
man.
wow.
Like I love how affordable they've made it, and it seems like Zoom is kind of taking that stuff on to be like their primary target audience now, whereas it used to be they used to really focus on like a lot more guitar pedals and all this other stuff. It seems like mobile recording has kind of taken off for them,
Yeah.
and they've been investing a lot back into it, and you can see it in their products. Like ever since the first like H4 and H2, like
Yeah.
the products now are just so much nicer, and they got like the H1s, and which the H1 is more like a dictation device almost, but
You know what I'm still interested in? That live track.
was that that's like the mixer with the recording in
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I'm interested in
Yeah.
it because I feel like I would use that pre going into my computer. Like I would just create a bunch of ideas there and kind of use it as a tape machine. and then from there, kind of like start sending things into the computer because it has I think it has onboard memory or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Or
yeah,
SD or something.
bro. They even Zoom just came out with an Ambio mic.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You're talking about. Hold on. Let me pull this up. I'll
The
see if I can.
VR, the VR joint for 360 audio.
Yep.
Yo, I need to mess with that.
Yeah, I'm trying my best to steer clear of the vast majority of that stuff because I know I'm gonna. Not only is it gonna be a money sink for me, but it's also gonna be a hard drive sink.
I
Like
can't.
I just know how much. Uh, oh my god, I just know how much data I'm gonna be just
Oh yeah,
crunching into my hard drives doing 360 audio.
dude. I think no, not the other day. It was like last month. I was at my friend's house, and I never tried one of those VR headsets before. Right?
Yeah.
Never tried one. I tried I think it was the Samsung one. It was like it's a really good
The
one,
Gear
but
VR.
yeah, but I was playing the Spider-Man game
Oh, okay.
where you play as Spider-Man. Dude, I almost threw up.
I don't think that's a great thing, but
No, it's not because it was bad. It was because once I had those headphones on, I mean those headset on, I was freaking on top of a roof, swinging like from a building, and it was so immersive. I was like, oh man, I got to do sound for this stuff. This is so cool. It's like a
yeah.
whole nother like,
All I can think of is Wheezy virtual reality.
bro. I would love to do that, but then I would have to like do mad 3D renderings of my dog, and then just have people upload them to the cloud. Yo, that's
Dude,
kind
you
of
need that 3D cam and just stick it on his collar and you're good to go.
dude. Wasn't there a movie like that? Wasn't it like Lawnmower Man or something like that?
Oh yeah.
Where, oh man,
Classic. That's classic. Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I this is so off topic, but I've been eBay hunting getting a Gear VR set up just
oh
because I'm
really?
like yeah, because they're really cheap on eBay, man. You can get them for like $50.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and I got that S8, so I actually want it just to like lay in bed and watch movies and annoy the hell out of my wife, but that's totally off
Dude,
topic.
that's dude. Just me watching movies on my iPad in bed annoys my wife. So I could imagine.
Well, she doesn't like it when I bring like drum machines, like because I sleep with like the Tempest next to the bed. She gets really irritated when all she hears and feels this tapping all through the night, and it's me with my headphones on, like banging on the Tempest or something.
Oh man, that's hilarious. I'm just picturing you with like the brute and the rack, like in bed patching stuff.
She's that's been kind of like which I thought it would be cool because there's like I'm not tapping on it so much if I bring a modular into the bed, but she's not happy about that. She said no. She drew the line because I had like a suitcase with like a 6U of modules and apparently no. So
Oh
So
man,
moving on, I want to talk about some gear that pulls you out of your average routine or average. Let's talk about like rhythms and melodies first, right?
okay,
So I have like go to scales that I tend to play, and I
yeah,
have go to like I do a lot of finger drumming. I have go to finger drumming that I tend to do, and like if I just reach for a drum machine and start finger drumming like without thinking at all, like there's like maybe 6 patterns that like just instantly pop to my hands, like muscle memory, you know?
mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't want any of that to taint what I'm doing, so I'll use other gear. I
Yes,
assume that you're in a same vein.
yeah.
What's some of your like go-to inspiration pieces?
My iPad, because nothing is normal on the iPad. There's nothing that's like
Name names if you're gonna just say that. Just say my computer.
okay. So I use Autolus.
Yeah.
Um, I actually use Autolus a lot.
I want to
So
use it more, but to me it just so I like it by itself, but the problem that I have is that I keep wanting to interact it with my modular and whatnot.
yeah,
And then at that point, the conversion between
yeah.
Audulus to modular, it feels like I'm doing a bit of rocket science.
Yeah,
And like
it's different. Yeah,
I want it to I want it to be exactly what it is, but like not have to deal with as much math and that kind of stuff on it. Like I'd
oh
rather
no,
it just
dude,
be,
I get it. Because sometimes
but it's so gorgeous too.
yeah, it's gorgeous. But that's what I was gonna say. Another thing that I tend to do is go into reactor blocks.
No, that
And
I use a lot.
yeah, I just go into reactor blocks and I just start patching things and start making textures and sounds. Yeah, Cauldron is a dope app on the iPad. It's really, really good.
I don't think I've used that. What is that all about?
Cauldron is another synth. Same guys that make Magellan and also make what else did they make?
Cauldron. It sounds familiar, but
Yeah, Cauldron is dope.
all right, I definitely need to check that out.
Also, there's this app called Soundfrews. Now, Soundfrews is a granular sampler that picks up anything that's incoming into the iPad in real time. So like I could be talking right now and it's recording me. And the moment I press stop, it just starts granularizing everything that I just said, like in real time. And then the moment I press, it's like a looper and a granular like sampler at the same time. It's so cool. So I just create a lot of textures with that sort of stuff. Another thing is guitar pedals. Guitar pedals break the monotony for me.
Now, how so you say guitar pedal would break the monotony. How does that change your workflow though?
Because instead of me sitting in front of the computer, I'm normally sitting on the floor, patching things and using my ears more than my eyes. Which, you know, as a studio guy, we can get accustomed to using our eyes a lot and just defaulting to like things. Yeah, sampler is it's great on the iPad too. Yeah, I tend to have here's what I was gonna say. I tend to have a way of doing things. Like if I'm going to make a kick drum, I normally default to whatever this oscillator and this synth to make a kick drum. When I use guitar pedals, sometimes I say, well, can I make hella noise and just make a kick drum out of noise?
Yeah.
And how much distortion can I generate and then sample that and then pitch it down and then put it through an envelope and then do all that stuff. So my process is different when using guitar pedals just because I'm literally figuring it out as I go and I'm committing to everything that's being recorded.
So I want to show you this real quick. So this is what I tend to do, and I guess I'll just grab one. There we go. Drag and drop this. So this is the only Windows computer in my house. But I have a Surface. I have the Surface Pro 2.
Dope.
And all I really use it for is like formatting SD cards, running tests on prototype gear, because sometimes they need that, and the Mac stuff usually comes later. But really, studio-wise, all I use it for is Reactor, and using it with like blocks or System 63 or something like that. And I have a bunch of presets like that I've built myself that are all designed to work with the ES8 from Expert Sleepers. So if there's like a module that I want that I can't afford or whatever, I just
try to make that joint.
I have it set up. Let me see if I can show you this. Sorry if it's super glary. I'm trying to make it so it doesn't glare so much, but I have all these modules already set up with all the inputs and outputs of the ES8 module, which is it's a 4 input, 8 output audio interface for Eurorack. So I can just literally plug right into that, plug out of that. You plug one USB cable from this to the module, and I can control everything just like that, which is awesome. Super easy way to use Reactor with my actual modular and treat it like I don't even sync it to the rest of my computer. Like it all just stays right where it is. You know what I mean?
That's cool. So it's basically like a digital modular rig, another rig.
Yeah. So I had the disting, and I didn't like it because I didn't like having to try to memorize how I was changing through banks and all that kind of stuff. I just really did not enjoy the menu system on that thing at all.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with this thing, but what I've heard is that some people don't even know how to get out of some modes that it's in.
Yeah, so I it just became it's one of those things where like I got modular so that it's basically knob per function, and that's the exact opposite of that. So I treat the ES8 like a much more easy to understand and fleshed out disting. Like I treat it, granted it's also a whole lot more expensive that way because you're running a computer, Reactor 6 blocks, and a fairly high-end Eurorack module altogether, but it's really freaking cool. It's a really awesome way to do that. Like, I always had this vision in my head of doing a multi-band bit crusher, where I could bit crush the highs, keep the lows nice and solid, and then maybe saturate the middle or something like that.
Yeah.
With Reactor, I'm able to actually build that. You know what I mean? Whereas if I did it just using Eurorack modules, I'd be spending a ton to do that, So I'll do things like that. For me, as far as guitar pedals are concerned, they don't necessarily take me out of my normal workflow so much because I like to keep them as like effect sends on my mixer.
Yeah.
So like to me, that's just like another route that I can throw stuff to. But what I do is I'll use I like generative sequencing and random. Like I love random sequencers.
Yeah, me too. I love that stuff.
So hold on, I'll show it real quick. I set this up right before we went live. And it wasn't like a long setup. Oh, did I not change my camera? Here we go. So this is, and for those of you not aware, this is, what the hell am I doing here? Do I not know how to do anything? Or is it just not switching? It's supposed to switch. It looks frozen. Does my camera look frozen to you?
Yeah, dude, you're frozen.
Well, that probably makes us all happy. Hold on, let me unplug it, plug it back in.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm gonna turn on the light too.
All right, let's see what happens now. I unplugged it and then I plugged it back in. Let's see if this works. There it is. Okay. So, I'm in my dungeon space right now. This is my temporary studio until the new room is built. Yeah, so Nathan is in here saying Fumana and like 3 rolling bit razors, only $2,000. Yeah, I hear you, man. That's kind of like where I was going. I actually really did enjoy those little rolling modules, with the virtual modules inside of them.
Oh, the Turing, the Turing or whatever those modules.
The IRA modules that they had. It's a shame that like they didn't get properly supported in the long run because like. It's so weird because Roland being the company that it is, it's like, it's funny because I look at some of these small boutique guys and they would take a module like that and they would probably support it for years and constantly be throwing updates at it. Roland did like 2 updates and they're like, okay, time to move on. So sad. So sad.
That's all right.
But so, yeah, let me hop over here real quick and just kind of show what I'm talking about. I'll unmute this because I got some noise happening here. But so the Fluxus 1 sequencer at the bottom here and the Trigger Riot right next to it. What I tend to do, the Trigger Riot will switch between I'll either use it to do tempo synced envelope triggers or freezing of effects and that sort of thing. So a lot of the times what I'll like to do is I'll sequence just the hi-hats on the Trigger Riot. Everything else will get sequenced by the what is it? The Beat Step Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And then like effect freezing and envelope changes to alter modulation. So things because the Beat Step Pro thing does random is way cooler. Like it just has so much more that it can do. And then you tie that into the Fluxus 1, which I can do like random sequencing on that, and I can keep things in a certain scale. So as an example, this, I literally just kind of turned the knob 16 times and came up with this patch. and it's already synced up. It's in a scale, and I can just, and then if I want to bring the hi-hats in, I just start playing with the knobs on here.
That's fresh.
And it's just quick and easy for me to get these kind of crazy change ups, And then, of course, yeah. So with that, so with that module, I can just basically sync everything up, and then I can start playing with probability amounts and a little bit of random timing shifts, that kind of thing. And you kind of it's like this dictated amount of random. Like, I don't want it to be 100% random to where it just sounds crazy and like everything is kind of just this jumbled mess. But what I want is controlled random. I want just enough random that, okay, I know where I would go. Where will it go? It's almost like having, like, when you bring a friend over to collaborate with you and you're like, you haven't worked with them in a while, and then all of a sudden they do something with a track that you've already been working on. You think you know where that track's going, and they go somewhere completely different, and you're like, oh man, okay, that opens up so much. So I love that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know for me, what I'm attracted to about the randomness is almost like it's gonna inspire me to give me ideas that I didn't necessarily think of. Like I'm like, especially as a drummer, that's why I like the Trigger Riot, because I'm like, man, that's probably gonna spit out rhythms at me that I wasn't thinking about, and it's gonna inspire me to play stuff that's gonna be like, yeah, I need this in my life. That's kind of why I like polyrhythms a lot, because when I produce with a lot of polyrhythms, it just gives me things to create with. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just attracted to that sort of stuff. I know some people don't like random stuff at all. They just like everything to be planned.
So like the first random module I had gotten was I got the Turing Machine with almost all the expanders. There was one more expander that came out much later. I forget which one that one was, but I had like the gates and I had the voltages, all that stuff, and I really liked it. But it just, there was something about it that just didn't quite get me where I wanted to be. As far as it would be nice and random, but like I kind of wanted to be able to keep things a little bit more constrained, and I wanted to lead the random in better paths. You know what I mean? And that's where things like the Fluxus one come in, and and some of the things that are on Reactor too. Like when there's a ton of really cool probability generators on Reactor, way before blocks ever came out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just tons and tons. Like I dig through ensembles for the Reactor user library, like I do record digging. Like I treat it the exact same way. It's like record digging, because as you start digging through it, a lot of the same parallels are there. Like when you're record digging, you'll look at who is the session musicians, who produced it, where did it get recorded at, those kinds of things. And then when you find another record, you're like, oh, this was recorded at the same place, and they used the same session sax player on this record as they did on this one. I'll probably like this. And then you'll grab that and you'll be like, oh, this drummer is on this one, I'll probably like that. That's how I found like Idris Muhammad and stuff like that. Like I had no context as to who he was, and I found him as a session player on other records. And So like you learn things like that. Reactor modules are the same way. If you read the notes on, okay, this guy helped this guy with this, and
Yeah.
this guy helped him with this aspect of this module, and then you start looking for that guy's modules, and you start kind of doing different things like that, and next thing you know, you've got, dude, I've got thousands of reactor ensembles that are just
Yeah.
amazing.
I literally have a folder in my hard drive that's 12 gigs of reactor ensembles.
Mine's like 63.
Oh my god.
I'm not even kidding.
Ooh, that's crazy.
Dude, and not only that, I have it backed up like 5 times. So like
Yes,
as I was saying, like
I
as
have
I was
crazy
saying, like
backups.
that 360 audio would be a hard drive sync for me. That's why, because like I get redundant with my hard drives because I have to have everything backed up so much. Yeah, man, my reactor libraries are outrageous.
So, dude, what's crazy is I finally figured out my dream setup of sequencers for modular. So these are the three that I want for my rig. I'm gonna get the SEQ from Polyperk.
Yeah, that
That's
thing
gonna
looks dope.
that's gonna be like my main beat to make beats with, right? But then I want to get the Trigger Riot and the Fluxus One.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff that the Fluxus One that you've showed me that it does that's insane when it comes to like the arpeggiations and all that crazy stuff. And in the Trigger Riot, I kind of want the Trigger Riot to be the thing that modulates a lot of my effects because it's so random. I want it to be that for my modular rig. Like I want it to trigger my delays and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah, I think my next like probably major modular purchase will be like the Erogenous Tones makes a module called the Radar, which I've been wanting one of those for so long. But it's basically it's 8 envelopes, and those envelopes can be controlled really well, and it's really awesome. But that's part of why I want it is so that I can tie my Trigger Riot into all these envelopes and just letting it do its thing like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, man, my whole thing about the Trigger Riot was I am so used to programming beats on an MPC or a machine, and even like Drum Brute and 808 style programming, that kind of thing. I wanted something that was completely opposite of that, something that would get me completely away from that so that I could start coming up with things that surprise me again,
No,
because I wasn't really surprising myself for a while. And I was kind of like, okay, well, it seems like a decent amount of cash to drop on something that's just throwing out triggers. And I was looking at different ways of doing it, but man, after I really looked at the specs of what it could do, goodness gracious, man, it has exceeded every expectation I had for it. There's not a lot of modules that I'm like, man, this module is everything I wanted and more. It is exactly that. I haven't done any videos or anything on it either. I need to, but the thing is with that, I want to do a video that does it justice, and it's such a deep module that it's like, okay, well, I don't want to just show what everybody else already knows about it. Like I need to show some examples of some stuff that I like. So one of these days I'll do a cool.
Just do one video at a time though, because I think if it's so deep, we can probably you can do a whole series on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I don't know that I want to do a whole series on it because I have actual work to do. And the videos are just for fun.
No,
that's what I think a lot of people don't quite get. They're like, oh, you need to do a video on this, that, and the third. I'm like, yeah, but I also have a life.
No,
like I have other shit I got to do in this world.
I totally get it, man, because there's stuff that I want to do, but I'm like, I don't have time to do them because I'm too busy working and trying to bring stuff in for the house. I get it.
Yeah. So another thing that takes me out of that that standard workflow is getting away from electronic gear. Sometimes I just set up a mic and an acoustic guitar, maybe some bongos or something. Even like, dude, honestly, pots and pans. I still love them. Like, loved them ever since I was a little kid. I'll take out, like, I'll just get a couple of bowls and plates, a couple of glasses, and I'll just for a couple of hours just set up a small setup and just jam like that. and record it all, and then I'll go and I'll chop it up and stuff and just see what I got, you know? And I find that just getting away from using buttons and electronics and this, that, and the third, sometimes it's just really nice to just be alone, you know?
Oh no, I get it, and I know for me it's the same thing. Like when I'm not feeling inspired, I just turn everything off and get on the drums and just start playing for a couple hours, and then I'll write a ton of music in my head while I'm playing drums, and then just jump back onto Machine or whatever the case of what I'm working on, and just complete my thoughts.
Are you so how attached do you get to your gear? Because the reason why I bring this up is because I know that you were using the OP1 for a while and using that for a lot of inspiration,
I
but
got
then you
rid of it.
sold it.
Yeah, I got rid of it.
So tell me a little bit about how you don't hoard.
So the reason why here's the main reason why I got rid of the OP1. There's literally 3 apps in my iPad that destroy my OP1. And I hate saying that because the OP1 is such a cool instrument, but the reality is it's a box with software in it. And I couldn't justify having this $1,000 box sitting on my desk or in my backpack that my iPad could do way more computing than it. And I can get deeper and more intricate with sequencers and stuff in my iPad because of the fact that I'm doing work. Like I'm doing stuff for clients, and the OP1 was fun, but I can get a lot more work done and then some with the iPad. So I just figured I'll get rid of it and use that money to get the Matrix Brute, which is still packed up.
Which I don't even know how to deal with you. I'm like, I don't have room nor time for this. Let me open it up and sit it on the kitchen table.
Nah, dude. You know what it is? Also, the OP1 too was great, but the sequencer, I had to think in order to make music on it. I hate working with a device that I still have to think while I'm using it.
Yeah.
And that's how I know it's not the instrument for me.
How do you feel about so on push you can set scales and you can really kind of basically set it to be almost idiot proof, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever get into a situation where you put it into a mode like that and then just kind of like run your hands across it and just kind of do whatever and then see what you come up with?
I do that
across it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be very honest on when I do that. I do that when I'm being hella lazy and I don't want to set up a keyboard controller with Ableton. I'm just like, let me just use push by itself and
Well,
see
that's what I'm saying. That's what I tend to use. I tend to push by itself more than anything else. Like as far as doing that,
I don't necessarily like sequencing chords or melodies on push. I love it for sequencing and creating. Well, I use it for arpeggiations, but chords, no, because voicings. I have a special relationship with the piano where I'll sit there and I'll start voicing things in a certain way that I still don't think that I feel comfortable enough on push. I know there's a lot of guys that are super perfect. Like I watch this guy Jonathan Stein all the time. He's brilliant on push, brilliant. Like guys like Da Vinci, I've seen him like doing all this cool like melodic stuff on push, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I don't got time to dedicate to push like that. But I have tried some of those scales, and you know what? I have come up with some cool music when I just sit there and try it, because it's not the way that I normally think. Again, it's just breaking the monotony and trying something different in order to get new ideas. So
I love the fact that you can turn on a scale, but but still have the out of scale notes,
yeah.
So you can still kind of get those other happy accidents outside of the scale, and you can also kind of deviate and make it your own, and so I really enjoy that. My issue with Ableton is still just I can't stand the way that they handle audio editing and it just to me still like I want Push to feel more like a hardware unit than it does. And I want Machine to have more fully fleshed out functionality like a DAW than it does. So it's like the two, I tend to use the two together a good bit, but it's like I really just wish it was just one damn unit,
Yeah,
and that drives me insane.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Another thing that does drive my creativity is limitations. You know, and for instance, when I did have the OP1, that was why I would sit down and just make fire beats on it, because I had to figure out how can I get this to sound dope on this stupid machine that doesn't have a traditional sequencer, that I have to literally punch in everything. Like I used to get annoyed like making beats on the OP1. It was fun because it was a challenge, because I was limited on what I could do. And I literally had to again think, how am I going to do this every time I'm making music on it? Which was great. It stretched my thinking, but at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, I can't work with this. Like I can't. It's too time consuming, and I can't justify that time versus returns. So
what about older sequencers and older gear like MPCs and SRs and SP1200s, that kind of thing, SP404, that kind of stuff.
So I have the okay, so hold on, I'll show you this. I have the SP here, machine running into the SP.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my regular chain.
So and you just run audio from Machine straight through that. You just treat Machine as a separate piece of audio hardware.
Yeah, I have it in, I have the outs, and I have that running through the SP, and then sometimes I run the SP through guitar pedals, and then the guitar pedals through a compressor, and just stuff like that, because I like to design on the way into my computer. Plugins are cool, but plugins don't have the headroom that I like. Plugins don't have a lot of the things that I need when I'm designing. I like an analog EQ that I can just, pump the bass or pump the mids or do stuff before going into my computer. And I have the UAD stuff, which is cool, but still it doesn't have the headroom that I'm looking for. And I like to clip things in the analog domain. I like to do that. I just like crappy sounding grunge on my stuff, and it makes me happy.
Just to kind of, because it hurts me. So yeah, dude, running audio through the analog delay on the Matrix Brute is all that and a bag of refried chicken.
Really?
Yeah, dude, you need to be doing that.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
It's so much fun. Like for exactly what you're saying, to get that breakup. Yeah, dude, like that, and running it through the overdrive and everything inside of there. Oh god.
Well, dude, so that's how. So we have this series called Foul 808s, right? And I literally had the first TR8, and I ran it through the the micro brute. That's what I literally did. I just had the TR8, ran it through the micro brute, put that brute factor all the way up. It got out of control that the pitch was all over the place. I loved it. I loved that
ooh sound.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite sound. Like, and I know some people are like, oh, it's not pleasing to the ear. For me, distortion is the ultimate harmonic eargasm. Like, to me, like all that overdrive and distortion and fuzz and craziness has a ton of information in it. And that's what I always tell people, that when I'm showing them sound design, I'm like, yo, clip that joint and listen to the harmonics that come out of that.
Yeah, I do that. Like my modular started off in two directions. The first two directions that it started off was, one, I wanted to create something that would rival like a Moog Voyager, but one that I could pay for in installments that I could afford. And, for making non-affordable gear for the longest time. But anyway, the other thing was that I wanted it to be basically an effects rack that went to my needs. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I have so many different distortions and ways of overdriving and that sort of thing because I love just saturating things.
Yeah.
You know, and I've gone. The other thing, I'll run through my tube amps for my guitar amps and stuff. I'll run samples through that. You know, just anything I can to get saturation in different colors
Yeah.
because man, some things will sound great on one type of saturation and sound horrible on another. But yeah, Matrix Brute, I tend to use the overdrive in it a ton, and it's so easy with the insert points on it. And then of course you can run out of that into like I usually have it hooked to like a digital delay pedal or something,
Yeah.
so that I can mix it with more complex digital effects as well, which is
That's
dope.
that's another thing that inspires me. Routing, man. Like, I'll be like, you know what? What if I route this into a limiter and then run that into another limiter? Let's see what happens. Like, I just try stuff.
Yeah, actually, you know, shout out to Mads Lindgren, who's he actually works with Ableton now.
Dope.
At the time he was over at Native Instruments and he had showed me a trick using two limiters in series like that, and man, that's like, yeah, I really enjoy doing things like that, and just other creative routings in general. You know, different delays and you know, sending one delay chain. Like if you use a stereo delay, I'll send like the left through one type of distortion and the right through a different type of a distortion, and then blending them back together. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
The drum patch that I have set up right now. Let me see if I can show you this real quick. All right, sorry about that. Okay, my kid is screaming bloody murder upstairs too. So hopefully you guys can sample that up. That's always good. Sometimes I do sample him just being ridiculous. So what I wanted to show though is in this drum patch, I'm gonna I'll show it to you real quick because it's pretty easy. Creative use of utility modules is really fun too. So hopefully you can still hear my voice.
Yeah.
But so up top here, right? You'll see this light flash every once in a while. And what that is it's a quad comparator. I'm only using one channel of it, but when it flashes, that means the kick is reaching past a certain level. And when it does, it opens up an envelope, which basically sends the drum effects chain through a spring reverb and an analog filter that has a wave folding distortion on it and a Vactrol. So I can show you this. So this is just the affected side. And I can adjust what the threshold is with this quad comparator.
Okay.
Right? So you hear how it's like the low pass filter is sucking it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I can play with the amount of the Vactrol. Right? Now when I blend that in with the full drum mix, so you just get these little peaks of effects coming through.
Yeah, it's almost like a gate that's letting in through the effects. That's
yeah. And then of course I can. So now I'm just playing with the amount of the reverb. I have it turned down. But do you hear how that kick is like wow?
Yeah.
And then I can bring that. So with different drum patterns, it kind of affects how it sounds, you know? So that's just fun ways of like creative routing of audio signals to trigger off different effects
Yeah.
is really really handy, you know. Where am I at here? Oh, there you are. So yeah, with your setup, the acoustic drum set that you have behind you,
Hmm.
you recently got some new practice heads.
Oh yeah. So I got these mesh heads. Got these mesh heads over here, and they are absolutely silent. So I can hit.
That's so crazy.
I can hit really hard, and they have tone because the bottom head is still on it, so it has resonance. But they're literally like super quiet that I can play at 3 o'clock in the morning and not wake up my wife in practice.
Do you have the cymbals on there?
Yeah. So the loudest thing about this right now is the actual sticks hitting the cymbals. These cymbals aren't loud at all.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So, but here's the double benefit. I use the Sunhouse percussion triggers on these heads.
Oh yeah.
So I can MIDI. I can.
That's what I was just about to say. You're sending MIDI with that?
Yeah, man. So it's just one of those things where like if I want to play a real groove, and then just trigger machine with it.
Do you have like Roland has like the Octapad? Do you have like a sample trigger device?
I used to have the Roland SPDS.
Okay.
But I hated the sensitivity on it. I felt like you had to hit it too hard in order to hear the sample. I didn't like that. I kind of like this better. These mesh heads on the drums, just because it feels the reaction is closer to a real drum. So I feel like I can play the articulations and rudiments that
you So you had showed earlier. You showed your machine is running through the SP 404, and it's running. You're using the audio outputs of the MK3.
Yeah.
So do you primarily use it as just straight audio and record 2-track audio of your machine stuff, or are you multi-tracking it through the software also, or what are you doing there?
So depending on what kind of sound I'm looking for, like if I'm doing like real grungy, just super analog-y sounding hip hop, I'll just use the audio outs and I'll just record, a stereo break or my sample in stereo, or sometimes in mono. I'll just bring it in one channel, and I'll pan everything center in machine and just go out of one channel. Just because it just has a different vibe. What's cool about having the UAD Apollo is that because Native Instruments, I hope you're listening, you don't have loopback built into.
Oh, trust me, I've told them this 100 times. It drives me insane.
So with the Apollo, I have loopback built into that. So sometimes I use the Apollo as my interface, and I'll just sample stuff out of the loopback into the SP404 back into machine. So it's like
nobody should come out with the audio interfaces in these days without loopback. To me, like it should be on it should be on the smallest of audio interfaces. It should be on the biggest of interfaces. Like it's just too useful.
Well, I think one of the reasons behind it is because I don't think that's relevant to the people making the devices. And I say that
you're saying to EDM producers.
Yeah, I don't think it's well, not necessarily, because I know a lot of EDM producers that sample. Like when you look at the Detroit house and all that stuff, they're sampling.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of that stuff, but I feel like those aren't the people making machines, though. They're not the people making these devices. So sampling is a secondary thought. When for us, if we're saying like, yo, we're making a drum machine, the first thing we're gonna say is one of the voices needs to be a sampler. Something needs to sample in that joint. Like there needs to be something sampling in this, because for us, we don't just create sounds with machines. We grab sounds from the air, and which where Native Instruments did is kind of brilliant is those drum synths that are in Native
Yeah,
Instruments.
they're fantastic
Like
too. They sound great.
they're great, and I wish they would expand on that, like add more voices and add new, new different modules and update it a little bit, because I feel like I've probably used them to death.
They sound every bit as good as some of the expensive stuff from like Softtube, their drum
Yeah,
machine,
yeah.
which that
Heartbeat
drum
is
machine
dope.
Heartbeat is dope.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean honestly, like to me, the drum synth inside of machines sounds fantastic.
yeah, it does. It sounds really good. What I don't like about Heartbeat is that a lot of the design aspect of the voices are fixed.
Yeah.
I wish there was an envelope that I can go in and tweak the curve, or I wish there was.
You should go open up the hood and go in and
Exactly. I wish instead of just having a low pass filter, I can have a band pass, because I want to scoop it in the middle, and I want to create, a fat booty bass kick drum. Like I want to do certain things like that, but I just can't. Yeah, you just can't do that now with the soft.
Nathan's giving a shout out to the D16 drum machines, and I have to agree.
Yeah.
I love everything the D16
Yeah.
does. Like I feel like they get slept on. Like D16 as a company gets slept on. You don't hear people talk about them as much. But every producer that I know that is in the know swears by them. Like
so
Decimor.
I use Decimor. I use Decimor. I use not Destroy, Punchbox. Yo, Punchbox is cold, bro. That joint is cold. So for me, I'm just like, I won't talk about it a lot because I want to keep that secret to myself,
Tremor. Tremor, I love. Bro. Attack from Waldorf. I use Attack on iPad.
Yeah, me too.
And I just run audio. Like I love using that thing, man.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Man, see, again, Ken, those are the things that I'm glad we're talking about it, because these are the things that kind of break the monotony for how we're used to working. Like the fact that you can get on an iPad and you have a fully fledged drum synth on the iPad gives us no excuse on why we can make music on our phones, dude. We can make stuff everywhere. There's sequencers. There's
Beatmaker,
bro.
Come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy the time that we live in right now. If you think back to the fact that your Beatmaker does everything that the MPC, well, I don't want to say everything, but it does a lot of what the MPC did, and adds audio tracks and adds using AUV3 in the iPad, and you can literally use any interface. So it could always sound like a different machine depending on what converter you're using. It could sound different based on what you're using.
And you can throw effects like that MSX lo-fi effect.
Oh, yeah, that low fly dirt.
You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying?
That thing is actually really dope too, and I use that a lot too, man. It's like
here's a trick. What we tell people is, if you don't want it on your sound, but you just want the noise, all you do is put it on the track by itself and turn the knob all the way up.
Yeah, and you get that.
It just creates noise in the background, and you can blend that to taste. Again,
you could throw a compressor there, and then you have it sidechain in it, and yeah.
Oh, by the way, the first transient designer ever just came out in the iPad, and it's dope. It's
You talking about the SPL?
No. It's hold on, I'm looking for it right now.
And Audio Damage has a really dope sidechain compressor that basically lets you
Pump House.
Yeah, Pump House. Pump House on iOS is dope, man. Like don't sleep on that.
Well, Pump House, I think it's a regular plugin too.
Yeah, but the one for iOS lets you get around the lack of proper side chaining, and it'll basically it lets you sidechain, like it lets you set LFOs for it and all that stuff.
It's called Transient.
Yeah, and it's isn't it by SPL?
No, Transient is by
SP1 or whatever it was.
No, it's by it's by FAC, the guy that
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the guy that made the Maximizer and the Chorus. Yeah, but it sounds good, man. And that's the thing. I get inspired by anything that breaks my rhythm. And that's why I love polyrhythms so much, because when it comes to polyrhythms, I'm like, oh, I gotta try to catch this rhythm. I gotta try to learn how to feel this groove, and that's exciting for me. And I also like to challenge my muscle memory. Like I'm one of those dudes, if I hear somebody play a chord, I'm like, hey, how'd you play that chord? And then I'm there watching their hands because I'm like, well, my hands don't usually move like that. Let me figure out how you're playing it. And that's challenging to me. So, man, just throw something new into the recipe. Like, dude, remember when we were at your house and you were showing me how to make drum sounds with voices?
Yeah.
That for me inspired me big time because I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna go home and record my wife and make snares out of her.
I'm sure she's so flattered by that.
Yeah, she's like, what are you doing? Like, why? What are you doing? So just stuff like that is just really fun, and it's really cool. And I think it just causes us to think differently.
Yeah, and that's another thing is running audio through things that aren't necessarily standard audio effects. So in that case, like, you know, I'm running vocal snippets and stuff through drum modules. So I have this module called the triple exclusive OR, and it's generally speaking, how I tend to use it in my setup is I use it for triggering open and close hi-hats and differentiating between what it's doing. Like it's kind of hard to explain if I just do it like that. I think I did a video on it. Go watch it. But anyway, it's a logic module, which means it like switches. It's on and off, you know, and then depending on how many signals are coming in at once decides whether that switch is on or off. Well, if you send audio into it, you know, it'll run at audio rates because it's an analog switch. So you get this crazy distorted sound output from it. And that was like the very first thing I did when I got it, even though it's a utility switching module. The first thing I did was like, well, can I run audio through it? And how does that sound? You know, that sort of thing.
So check this out. I think you'll find this fascinating. It was like 4:00 in the morning the other day, and I was up working on the track, and I was like, man, I need some randomness right now to trigger this filter and delay. So what I did is I went on YouTube and I ripped a Cat Williams video, a comedy video, right? And I normalized it, right? And it's 2 hours of Cat Williams, a comedy special. I think it was 2 hours, like something like that. Somebody like took 2 videos and put it back to back on YouTube. And what I did is I sped it up 24 semitones so that it's Cat Williams, you know, he's doing this comedy, but it's really fast. Like, you know, hey man, it's just really fast. Threw it on an audio track in Ableton, put the envelope shaper on it, and created all these crazy peaks with Cat Williams comedy, right? Right? And then every time Cat Williams would say something or the crowd would laugh or the music would be playing, it was creating peaks and all this great. And that was my modulation source for the pads that I was playing. And it was cool because I started to realize that Cat Williams has a rhythm to how he speaks.
Yeah, he's got that cadence and
right?
that flow.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So what did I do? I went on YouTube again and downloaded a Chris Tucker stand-up. Did the same thing. A totally different cadence and rhythm. Did the same thing with Chappelle. And I was like, I'm going to start creating LFOs out of people.
I got to pull this video up real quick. Man, I got to pull this up because it made me think of this. And hold on. So I can share it.
Comedian LFOs. That's what I'm doing now.
So it's not that, but it actually relates to drums. Now let me see if I can't share this. I'm gonna see if the audio will go back through without feeding back. Hopefully you'll be able to hear my computer, and I need to make sure that there's nothing on my computer screen that people aren't allowed to see.
I know.
1 second.
You be having Dexter's laboratory over there.
All right, so let me see if I can share this real quick, because this is so to that same aspect, and it's all about inspiration. The reason why I want to show this, where are we at? Here we go. So you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Have you seen this video?
I think. Oh, that's what. Yeah. So, dude, I did that in college. He's transcribing all the stuff that they're saying. So that's what we have to do.
I want to play just a bit of this.
Yeah, it's great. He's doing the Office face.
Christ. All right, there's the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please? Now I'm dying to talk about the mail for you all day, okay?
That's great.
Yeah, so I had to show that real quick. Which I'm a big fan of It's Always Sunny, and then I saw that and I was just like, oh, that's so fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that whole cadence of speech being used as a modulation source, it's like, man, as soon as you said that, that's what I started thinking of.
But think about this now, Ken. Think about grabbing a video of your favorite drummer playing and just using that as a modulation source.
Well, to that same effect, going the opposite direction, sometimes what I'll do is I love playing with impulse responses and reverbs, right? So what I'll do is I'll take people talking or drum patterns or whatever, and I'll use those as my impulse responses. Yeah. And then when you throw like a drum pattern in as an impulse response, and then you throw that onto like a choral pad or something, it gives this rhythmic sound to your pad. And it's just, oh man, I love doing that sort of thing. Like all kinds of weird rhythmic sources as impulse responses.
There's an app that does that. It does the backwards approach of it, where it superimposes. It's some sort of spectral synth. Hold on, I gotta find it. It's called iDensity, and it's by Apesoft. And what it does, it's called Sparkle. I'm sorry. And what it does, like if you throw like an orchestra sample and a drum sample, it blends those two and gives the orchestra the transients of the drums, but with the chords of the orchestra. And so it's almost like a vocoder on steroid. It's really cool, but it maintains the texture of both pieces of audio. It's pretty cool, and it's right on the iPad, and you could just sit there and just run stuff through. You can basically, it's treating audio as the impulse responses, and you can create these tons of crazy textures and chords and melodies out of that stuff. So it's a pretty cool app. But again,
I think impulse responses as a whole, like when that started becoming more accessible, because for a long time, anything that was convolution was like, it was really hard to run on computers for a long time. Yeah. And now that it's like, pretty much everything can run it, it's, oh man, that is a wonderful sound design tool. And then you can kind of mix them to flavor.
I saw Diego Stocco do this one video once that was brilliant, with convolution stuff. And have you watched his videos with convolution reverbs?
I don't know if I've seen his or not, but I mean, I love Diego Stocco's stuff. So like, I want to say yeah, but I can't say that I recall what you're talking about.
Hold on. I think he came out with a pack of convolution impulse.
Yeah, he did. I do remember that.
And, yeah, it's the video that goes with that pack.
Okay.
Yeah, that thing was nuts.
Yeah, he does a lot of great techniques, and he's sometimes and that's the other thing too. If I want to get pulled out of my rut, sometimes I'll go and I'll watch other sound designers that inspire me. Like I'll go watch something that he does, and I'll be like, oh, okay, well that's a different way of thinking, and maybe I don't do exactly that, but I draw some inspiration from that to do something else.
Yeah, I definitely do that. Like when it comes to drums, if I need to be inspired, sometimes I'll listen to Indian music to listen to what they're doing on the tablas, so I can figure out different polyrhythms in my head that I can apply to drum set, or even with hip hop production. Like for instance, a lot of these people that are doing trap music, I'm not knocking trap music. I think it's cool. I think there's some stuff about it that's really cool, but I feel like everybody's messing with the triplets. Everybody's doing that sort of stuff, which I guess that's the sound of trap music, but you can grab Eastern and Indian influences and put that stuff into trap and get these crazy rhythms that'll still be in that trap vibe. It just won't be that triplet, that everybody's doing when it comes to trap music. So for me, I grab inspiration from all these other places. Dude, have you seen those women that are making water beats?
What is it?
The women that are dunking their hands in water and making beats
No.
with the tones of water.
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay, Ken, hold on. I gotta send you this link. You need to see this right now. Hold on. This is gonna freak you out. Nils Fromm used this on his album. And it was, hold on, water beats. Oh, hold on. Where's his joint at?
So yeah, while you're looking for that, I'll just say there was another technique that I used the other day. Speaking of Diego, I had actually saw he did like an Instagram video, and he was doing some sort of trick with mics or something, and I forget exactly what he was doing, but after I saw it, it was all an acoustic piece where he was miking things up and showing how he was getting certain sounds. And I went and I synthesized the same sound using my modular. I was like, I want to make that exact same sound, but I want to do it all in the electronic realm, right? Just to show to myself that I could do it as like a self-learning process. So sometimes I'll take sounds that I hear and then I'll synthesize them myself just to show myself, okay, well, I have this concept in my head of, okay, well, a ring modulator will help me get this part of the sound. I can use this to get this part of the sound, and I'll kind of put together the patch in my head of how I think it should work. And then I'll apply it and see if it works,
Okay, Ken, I found it. Oh, man. Dude.
Where are you sending me the link at?
I'm going to send you.
You send it you can send it in the little blue chat window in our thing here.
Okay, hold on. Oh, man, dude. This is actually, for some reason, it's not popping up on my screen. I'm sending it to you.
Send it through Facebook.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Man, this thing is crazy. Watch this link that I just posted. Go to 1:48 and just listen to the sound. This is all water. It's all them in the water.
All right, let me pop this up in here so that people can actually hear it and see it.
And this is them singing, and it's all water beats.
All right, let me hurry up and share my screen, and we'll do it like this. We'll try not to get popped by the YouTubes.
By the YouTubes.
It might be really choppy on my setup right now.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah. All right,
You hear all those tones?
Yeah, and that's all coming from water.
That's all water, dude.
I'm gonna let this thing. I'm gonna let it buffer for a second here because I'm off of Wi-Fi right now, so in my dungeon. So
dude,
this is.
I heard that and I was like, wow, I need to figure out how they're doing that, and I'm about to make a water beat pack. Yo.
Yeah, that's dope.
That's crazy, dude. I was like, yeah. So I just wanted to show you that because I don't know if you had ever seen that. That's just like.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I'll have to watch the rest of that later.
And there's tons of video, and there's literally like one video where one lady's doing this crazy rhythm, and the lady next to her is making a bass line.
Man, that's yeah. There's so many different sources on YouTube where if you just start looking for inspiration in that way, that you can find it and just kind of like sit in awe for a minute and then be like, okay, well, how can I utilize, and not just sampling, I'm saying like just as inspiration for different rhythms and techniques and that sort of thing,
Yeah, I think it's cool, man, just to be inspired. Like for instance, I'm inspired by, of course, we have a Marco Polo group, and everybody in there sounds different. And I'm always inspired by hearing everybody else's stuff and be like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm just gonna make music on modular and see what it's gonna turn out like. Just because a lot of times we have to put ourselves in an uncomfortable place in order to make ourselves produce in a certain way. And I think that's really inspiring. And that's why I always encourage people, man, hang with people that inspire you. Hang with people that are
And
gonna push
uplift you.
you.
Yeah.
And yeah. Hang with people that are really gonna, if your friends don't make you better, then stop hanging with them. You know, like
That's
oh
that's real because like and it's not always, unfortunately, a lot of the times you got to look outside of your direct locality, you know what I
no,
mean?
of course,
So because I notice that when I have, I've got some great friends around here locally. I don't want to, disparage all of them, but I
Mhm.
also have a lot of friends that, from back in the day, that as soon as I hang around them, they bring out the bad Flux. The bad guy comes out. And I'm like, man, you know what? That guy, he might be fun, but he doesn't get a lot done. You know what I mean?
I feel you. I feel you because he's
So, but there's something about searching out people that maybe you're on a similar wavelength, but aren't an echo chamber, but will elevate you to a place where maybe you didn't think that you would eventually even be. You know?
yeah. What's really interesting is man, when it comes to music production, another thing that really inspires me is using really cheap gear. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just like I like you finding the most crappiest piece of gear and seeing, can I make this thing sound good?
I think like I go through these phases where I don't know if it's because of my current pocket situation or
Hmm.
if it's just because I genuinely enjoy it. I don't know. And I guess it doesn't matter because I use what I use. But I mean, for the longest time, I've always been inspired by really terrible digital synthesizers.
Me too.
Like
Like
the one,
Venom,
the
like
ones that have
Venom,
all kinds of flaws in them.
like
Like,
Venom.
yeah, well, like Venom, I wanted to burn I wanted to burn my house down with it in it. But so the number one on my list for that, right? Which I know I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna regret it because I don't have one right now. I sold it like about a year or so ago, and I kind of really, really regret it because I want to get it back already. The Red Sound Dark Star. That thing
Oh, okay.
is like, it's hot buttered garbage and amazing. Like it's so good and it's so bad. And I just, oh man, like I kick myself every time I think about the fact that I sold that thing because
Oh,
it
man.
epitomized everything about like an old digital synth that was why that stuff evolved and got better. It's like the complete opposite of like a System 1, right?
Yeah.
Because it does a lot of voices really terribly. you know um
You know what I had that I kicked myself for selling it, but I wish I had it now. You remember the MV8, the baby MV8000, the SP606?
oh yeah,
Dude, I
I'm trying to
had
think, was that the one that had like the MPC style layout with the
yes.
16 pads? I had one
Yep.
of those too, man, and god, that thing sucked.
It sucked, but it had a sound.
If you had used an MPC and then you went to that, like, so I got one for at the time I was in a hip hop group. I was in a rap group, and the MC in the group wanted to make beats too, and but didn't want to outlay the cash for an MPC at the time. And I was like, well, Roland came out with this thing. It's not an MPC. And I was like, listen, I'm kind of telling you, like, and this is back when it was like MPC or nothing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I kind of told him, I was like, listen, dude, the truth of the matter is you will get something other than an MPC and you will always wish you had an MPC. Like, because just nothing sequenced as well as the MPC did, and that's really was the kicker. Is like there will be things musically for a song creation that you just, man, the MPC had it. And we got that thing, and it was my job to learn it so that I can then teach it to him. And that thing just made me so angry. It was like I loved the effects on it, and I made some really crazy stuff on that thing, man. Like you could get inspired on it, but he wanted me to.
That's the thing. I think you can get inspired on anything, dude. Zoom makes those samplers. Remember those samplers that Zoom made?
I remember they had like the rhythm track and yeah.
Now what's crazy is I know a lot of dudes in the lo-fi hip hop community that use those Zoom samplers because they have a sound. Or remember Akai, the what is it? It's the MPC without a sequencer. You know what I'm talking about?
You talking about the S20 or the
S20?
Yeah.
Like those have a sound. So
the
like,
S20, SU20 or something like that. Yeah.
So like I'm like, it's cool to have little pieces like that because they'll just inspire different workflows. Like now you got to sequence that machine with a sequencer.
Well, when we started, we had this Gemini mixer that had like a 15-second sequencer. It might have even been less than 15 seconds. I don't know. It was a real short amount of time. And it was just a circular button. It was like an arcade button. That's like all it was. And you couldn't really do anything with that thing but sample right there. And you had to do it in time, right?
Yeah.
And my DJ at the time, DJ Mech, he would sample up on that thing. And then we would record that to tape and just loop it over and over and over again. And then we would take that to the studio where we would transfer it to an SB1200.
Ken, I used to make pause tapes.
Oh, yes. Pause.
Yeah, you remember pause tapes, man? Like,
yo, my first serious piece of like hip hop production gear, because before that, it was like mostly like a guitar and like maybe some like old Alesis drum machine or something, or like a Tascam 4-track. But my first serious piece of hip hop kit was a karaoke machine, a cassette and CD karaoke machine, and I could play instrumental CDs and I could record my voice to tape, and I could also loop. Yeah, man, that was the jam.
Ken, I used to listen to the jazz station. And what I would do, I would always wait for the drum break to play in a song, and I would loop that, right? And then I would take the EQ that's on the center canceling on the karaoke machine, and I would just get the bass line from something, and then I would loop that on it. And by the end of the track, it sounded like a beat, but you also heard this.
That tape hiss is worth money these days.
Yeah, bro. I do everything that I can to make tape hiss, and I just have a Walkman, an old Sony Walkman that I use, and I just
use this MSX audio app.
Oh yeah. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm saying. Like those limitations make you ultra creative. And it's
I've got this little Tascam 4-track that I still have, and I use that thing, and like I just use it for effect. I keep toying with the idea of releasing a sound pack on tape so that people and sending it with a little like Walkman, so that you get the sounds on the Walkman like that. So and then you sample it into your sampler yourself.
Dude, you should do a test it out.
I've been wanting to do that for a while, but
you should record some of your 8-bit dip stuff on that.
Oh, I've done it. I have tapes done. I just want it, but when I do it, I want to do it because I don't want to rely on other people having tape players already. Like I want to send it out there, and I'll probably end up circuit bending them too, so that you have like control over like CV or even knob control.
So I actually want to do that. I saw somebody using his cassette player as a sampler, and he was CD control, and I was like, that is brilliant.
It's really not that hard to do. The problem is that you'd be surprised how expensive tape players can be that are reliable. You know what I mean? That aren't gonna, you can of course go to Goodwill and find some, like that's really the way to go. But that's the same way I treat again, going back to record digging, that's the same way I always treated that. Like, I never really liked going to the record store to get my records. I always prefer going to flea markets and
Yeah,
Goodwills and
I
that
like
kind of
that
thing.
too. Because for me, I used to find gems that nobody bought there.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like, well, where do you think the record stores are getting these used
Yeah,
records? It's like, aside from people bringing in records to buy, which usually the people who are bringing in records to sell, I used to work at a record store. They're not bringing in good stuff like that. They're bringing in garbage. So
yeah,
it's
no, I
like,
feel you.
it's man, when you go to certain thrift stores and whatnot, that's where you get the gems.
No, I feel you, man, and that's the way to go. But Ken, I think I have to walk wheezy.
Yeah, I
So
was just about to say we're about time to finish the show up. It's
yeah,
been
man,
like 8 hours.
I know,
So
but it
I
was
think
fun
we're
though.
good. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, check out Racks for Live. Racks for
Yeah,
Live it's online now.
yeah, we're up and running, and we have you can go on there and you can we have a free rack of 64 sounds, or you can buy any of the products that we have there. We have a bunch of racks, a bunch of sample presets, a bunch of effects presets. Yeah, man. We just make it easy for you to get up and running in Ableton
Nice.
without you having to import a bunch of stuff. And we make some pretty cool sounds just for you guys to, get it in,
Yep. And over on my side of things, you can go to shop.fluxwithit.com. I've got some stuff up there. I'll be having, oh man, I got a huge drop in new products. I'm going to be dropping about 10 new products within about a
Nice.
week. So that stuff is all coming. So you can get the stuff that's already out. You can also check out the new stuff that's coming. I believe it's also going to be up on B-Boy Tech Report as
Oh,
well. Beat
nice.
People. Yeah. So I'm going to start selling sounds on there as well. You can find my sounds on Big Fish Audio, sounds.com, a few other places as well. So, just if you see the logo, support that kind of thing. Yeah. So thanks again for the show, man.
Dope. No problem.
I'll talk to you later. Let me stop the broadcast.